All right, welcome to the stream. Let me do a quick audio check just to see if we got audio. All right, think we're good there. How's everybody doing this afternoon? I went ahead and took a trade right here before I would even turn the stream on. You can see I got this 5-minute fair value gap that I highlighted here. I actually kind of missed the entry on it, but this would be the silver bullet setup that happens between 2 and 3 p.m. every day. So got this 5-minute fair value gap, traded back into it, and then the long would have been from there. So I took a quick trade on that, made $200, so already up 200 this afternoon. So just gonna kind of be relaxing, looking for the next setup. Not really gonna force anything today, and let's see what we get. All right, just kind of waiting, watching here for the next setup. Um, the reason I took profit where I did there, if you're curious, at the 90, I took profit at 93.25, but we do have a pivot at 90. Kind of thought we'd overshoot it a little bit, and then maybe turn it into support for the move higher. So we'll see how much further we're able to go here. You got the 800 psych level here, so if we get above that, then we possibility have the push into the 815. Got this liquidity resting there at 815. So let's take a look at the ES, see what it's doing. All right, finally made it over there. Let's see here. What has it been doing today? this afternoon. Kind of had a big move down here at 130. Not sure what caused that. Get on a 3-minute chart so we can see it a little better. It also traded into the fair value gap from earlier. I mean, it's kind of amazing how these gaps work, how efficient they are. And you can see that was the perfect entry this morning off this gap, and literally it's respected it every time. So the ES is kind of making its way up into a bearish fair value gap from this morning. I guess you can see it here on the 3-minute chart. So it kind of got a bearish fair value gap up here. It tried to get into the gap earlier in the day. Did not make it. It got rejected at this fair value gap, which on the 5-minute chart, that actually might be, yeah. So it traded up into, let's just go ahead and mark that gap out just for reference so we don't forget that it's there. So you can kind of see how price action respects these gaps. So tapped up into it, rejected, went back down into another bullish fair value gap and came back out of it. So far just kind of bouncing between these ranges on the ES here. And kind of have the same thing here on the Nasdaq. So we'll just kind of keep these as a point of reference, just in case price makes its way back to there. And if you're unfamiliar with what a fair value gap is, there's a pretty simple explanation here. If we just zoom in a little bit on this chart, it's just a 3-candle setup, 3-candle pattern. So you have 3 candles. You have your first candle. The bottom of the first candle is here. Second candle's here, third candle's here. So it's the difference between the bottom of the first candle and the top of the third candle. If there's a gap on the second candle, then that's a fair value gap. And that's just kind of an attraction for price. It likes to trade back into these gaps. Typically get a reaction there. You can see here on this middle candle here on the way down, we created another fair value gap. It traded back up into it, moved down into this gap, and then moved back up. So we'd kind of probably going to see some sort of reaction once it reaches this bottom square. If it makes its way through it, then we may see a reaction here. That's kind of what we're waiting for. So if we trade up into here and we get a reaction back down, we'll try to find an entry to ride it back down to this gap. If it trades through it, same concept, except we'll use this one. If it trades through this middle gap, then that will invalidate this gap. Since price action has not revisited it since it was created, except for it hasn't traded back through it, so it's still valid. And you could say, well, why don't you, if you think it's going to revisit this gap, why don't you take a trade from, here to the gap? You certainly could. Problem is, I've already taken a trade on this move up, and I missed my entry. Entry's down here. So theoretically, if I did enter here, stop would have to be way down here at the bottom of the gap. It's just too much risk versus the reward. Looks like the ES has almost made it to this bearish fair value gap here at 90. Let's see what happens once it gets there. So I kind of feel like we're going to trade through this gap on the Nasdaq here and probably go after this liquidity up here. Let's take a look at the ES. It's approaching. See, the ES does not have that mid-range liquidity on it like the NAS does. So we have this liquidity on the NAS before the high of day. The S does not have that. Well, I mean, I guess you could call this the liquidity, but it's about to take that out already. And then beyond that's just the high of day. Kind of in a dangerous spot here approaching this trend line. If you just go high to high, you draw a line, you would expect we might get a turn down somewhere in here. So we put in higher high, lower low, higher high, or high, lower low, high, lower low. So this might just be a lower high, may get rejected here at this trend line. All right, let me explain that a little better. I messed that up. So we have a high, lower low, lower high, lower low. We could be putting in a lower high here. If you look on the ES, it's a little different. You have a high, lower low, lower high, lower low, but it looks like we're going to make a new high here. So the ES is kind of breaking out of this this trend here that we've had going on for a little while. All right, so it looks like we are getting a reaction to this gap here. You can see we create first red candle since we were moving up. Well, not the first one, but put in a red candle with a wick to the upside. It kind of shows like momentum slowing down. So if we trade back out of this gap and we have a market structure shift to the downside, breaking through this swing low, then we'll look for an entry back to this zone here. Let's kind of look at the ES. Again, the ES tapped, just kissed it. So let's see if it does something similar. Dollar's moving up, which would indicate our markets should move down. So let's just watch it, see what we get. All right, looks like action's revisiting the gap again. Let's kind of keep an eye on it, see what happens. Obviously, there's no trade to be had until we either shift in structure to the downside or we make it all the way back up to this next fair value gap. You can see here we did create a fair value gap here, and it kind of traded back into it. Now it's trying to go higher, but that's not a trade I would take. All right, the dollar is starting to move lower. So it was making a push back up, but now it's kind of stair stepping its way down. So that might give us the energy to get through this resistance here. All right, if we make it through this kind of trend line, if we bust through here, I mean, that could be an opportunity for a long just up to the gap before we meet this resistance. So we may give that a try. We did just reach the top of the hour, though, so this little energy push that we got here could be short-lived, but let's see. See if the dollar makes a new swing low here. All right, the dollar is about to make a new swing low. ES is pushed up into the gap now. You can see how small these last few candles have been. Bodies are very, very small. So something's about to happen. I think we may get this push through here up into this gap. Getting some consolidation here. Got to get a break through this 22 area strong. Getting rejected so far right there at that trend line. Let's see what happens here. Now our shift of market structure would be here at this swing low instead of this one. So I'd like to see is I'd like to take out this swing low and then possibly take out this swing low and create a fair value gap on the way down. And then we could look at taking a short in that case. Obviously, we got to get through this fair value gap here before you could consider a short. Dollar popped up right there for a moment. The ES not really having the same reaction that the Nasdaq is having. All right, we're starting to get a little displacement here. Let's watch it. See if it offers an entry. I mean, you can see here that traded right back down into that fair value gap there and kind of is trying to move back higher. Got to get through this gap if we're going to have a short opportunity. If not, could just go higher. All right, the case for the bulls is they don't want to leave this lower high in here. The bulls want to get this above that trend line there, take it up to the high day. Bears want to keep it below that trend line and move it on down. So let's see who wins. Honestly, this price action is not very enthusiastic. It's pretty boring. It's pretty boring to sit here and watch this, but it's not a lot of action sometimes. All right, we're trying to break out of this trend line here. Let's see what happens. See if we can actually do it. Got to get above 22. Pretty strong here. In order to get this thing going. All right, we'll take a long here. See if we can't get a move up to this. Move up to the 35. Well, if we get rejected here and we move back below that trend line, then I may kill this trade. Just kind of want to move my stop to about the 20 area here. It's a little tight for this kind of for Nasdaq, but that would put us back below that trend line, and at that point it would just kind of be like a fake out. So try to, if it's going to go, it needs to go now, basically. I moved it down because it's created a fair value gap on the 2-minute chart here. So I'm trying to give it a little more room to work here. All right, once we get to 5 handles, I'm going to move my stop to break even. So, sorry, we're at 5 handles, stops at break even. Not going to let this go back red on us, so we can't lose. But looking for 34.75 here. See if we can get filled.
Order filled.
All right, there we are. $150 trade. It could go higher. It could seek this liquidity. But I just kind of wanted to take the short and easy trade there. So there we go. We outlined that trade. We followed our rules, which sometimes we don't do. And it worked out. Let's switch over to the ES and see what it's got going on. So it's making its way through the gap too. I don't have a feeling here it's probably going to just go for this liquidity to make a new high day. There was a pivot point on the ES at 92, 93, and it got right through there. So that's kind of part of what was holding it down. So you can see how you can use these gaps for entries. And also use them kind of as price magnets, you know. Likes to seek out those areas. Sometimes you get a reaction like we did here. Sometimes you don't. I mean, it reacted to this gap as resistance, but it made its way through it. So we used this trend line here for our entry, which is just a super simple strategy. You just simply draw the line. When it breaks through it, you take the trade. It's not rocket science, not hard at all. So all right, Nasdaq's about to make a new high. ES is following. I mean, this could be a little bit of a dangerous trade here, but let's take a little quick scalp up here to the new highs. Sometimes I'll play these types of trades.
Order filled.
There we go. So a quick little $85 scalp. What did that take? 5 seconds to get. ES getting rejected here at the highs, I would venture to guess that ES pumps right through there. It's got the 4,200 psych level too that it has to get through, but I'd imagine it probably gets through there. All right, so we were up $252 this morning, and we're up 414 this afternoon. So I doubt we'll be taking any more trades. We'll hang out for a few more minutes and see how the price reacts to these high days. ES still has not made it through the high day. Interesting. Nasdaq made a new high. The ES did not. A lot of times these gaps will turn into support. So where this was a bearish gap, a lot of times price will trade back into it, and it'll kind of turn into support for a move higher. So let's see if that happens here. When you have old liquidity here that it took out, sometimes that will offer an area of support. So let's just watch and see what happens. So on the ES, you don't really have that until you get back down here in the 90 area. See, I kind of bounced off that area right in line with these highs here. Doesn't mean it's not going to go through there, but it's certainly giving it some form of support. Just change the colors of these gaps just to make it a little easier to read. Not for me, but for you guys. Green ones would be bullish, red ones would be bearish. All right, probably gonna go ahead and just log off, just lock in what we got here for the day. Before I go though, I'll show you guys. This is another kind of little. It's an indicator that I like. I don't use it very often, but I do like it. You can see it gave us it draws these trend lines on here for you. This is the 2-minute chart. This is on trading view. And the indicator is trend line with breaks, Lux Algo. So you can see here, gave us the break signal at 807, and it moved all the way up to 856. So if you'd have taken the entry at 807, you would have had basically no drawdown. The low after that was 806. So 1 point of drawdown, and this thing just moved all the way up. So obviously it's not perfect, no indicator is, but when it comes to kind of buys and sells, this is pretty nice. So it's not printing a whole bunch of signals, as you can see. We had a sell signal of a break here. That one kind of failed. A buy signal here. That one works out fine. Sell signal here. That one works out. Buy signal. That one works out. Now, obviously, you see I'm not taking these, but just something to think about. It's an extra indicator that you can look at that seems to be decent enough. But anyways, that's going to be it for me. If you guys haven't already, subscribe, like the video, and I'll be live tomorrow morning at 9:15, continuing trading the Top Step 50K funded account challenge, and I'll see you guys then.